I'm Artie Fishelman of R2 Films, your AI host. Today we're interviewing Ian McLees and Daniel Bonventre of Talkboys Studio. They're creating amazingly funny and great films using AI. Guys, welcome to R2 Films. How are you today?
Great.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
for
having
having us
us.
in.
Great. Just to get started, you tell me a little bit about your background before what you were doing before AI rolled in, and kind of how did you begin to integrate it? When did you recognize this is a tool I could use and the potential of it?
Ian and I were TV comedy writers for a little over 10 years. We've worked together on all sorts of projects, scripted, unscripted, sold to networks and streamers. And eventually we came to this impasse where it seemed like the industry died and all the money dried up everywhere and nobody was taking chances on anything new. So, you know, we found these tools and we had a conversation and we said, let's just make all of these projects that we've written and love and are sitting in drawers and let's see if we can bring them to life. And we have no technical skills whatsoever at that point. This is like back in October of last year, September of last year. Uh, just taught ourselves through YouTube videos and trial and error and a painstaking process with nothing but sheer will and just dumb optimism that we could figure it out.
Emphasis on dumb.
Yeah.
No, that sums it up. I think it's like we have this Google Drive folder full of hundreds of ideas that normally would have cost us a lot of money to get off the ground, and the industry has shifted so much, as you know,
Mhm.
and we wanted to continue to get our ideas out there. And these tools that have come have moved so incredibly fast and have provided tools to filmmakers that are making really high level things, and audiences are engaging on social, on YouTube. It's really impressive, and we've had a really good time sort of making stuff and still be able to be funny and still be able to be quirky and weird and left of center and continue to be creative even when Hollywood feels like it doesn't know what it's doing.
Cool. Now you started with written material that you wanted to see visualized. Which tools did you go to first? And was it a gradual, sort of like, all right, we're just going to create some images or we're going to do some simple animations, or was it full dive in?
It was interesting. I mean, I think we first came with the images from like Hedra or Midjourney, and we're like, great, like, what do we do now? And then we learned about Minimax and animating them, and then editing them, and 11 Labs, and like it all came in sort of piecemeal. But once we started putting together like our own shows, it was like, oh, we needed to learn like 10 different programs sort of in tandem in order to make this work, and we've sort of been cobbling them together using a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and the AI filmmaking community has been really supportive. When
Yeah.
you are a newcomer, you have a question, people are recommending, use 11 Labs, use these settings, use Minimax for this, but use Kling for this, use Runway for this, but use Hedra for this. And then you're able to sort of piecemeal the different pieces of advice from other filmmakers you respect or whose work you like. And then gradually you just pick it up after a few weeks of putting yourself through this grad school training. So I think for Roadkill, the short film, we really just started with those character gens who were the characters. First, it was an original script. It was an original idea. This is something that we wanted to make actually a long form animated adult series, something for a streamer or an adult 90-minute feature. Again, very hard to do. And that would normally take years to get that off the ground. And so we put together this 15-minute short and then just made it ourselves.
So a lot of your work is primarily comedy based, and comedy is so timing dependent. Did you run into any challenges in terms of, I know a lot of early the newer AI films seem geared towards sci-fi because you can enter in like create a spaceship floating past a black hole with laser shooting, and it seems to do that very well. It's almost there's a challenge to find the more personal, intimate timing where it's, hitting the beat, hitting the mark, matching it with a look. It's the look that says everything in comedy.
Yeah, great question. I think I mean, our skill set is comedy, so we're not necessarily sci-fi writers, and that also seemed to be a safer and oversaturated space in AI. It doesn't take anything away from those filmmakers, but we wanted to challenge ourselves more with a comedy. It's also helped our work stand out. Um, there's only a handful, can probably count on two hands, the number of AI creators really doing true comedy. And we kind of know everyone in that circle. And that's sort of how we wanted to break through. Like we wanted to be part of that AI comedy community. And I think it's been really well received because we're trying to do something different.
And we've been able to sort of get by because, editing helps a lot with timing. And, that's somewhat of a skill set that like we had in, film school or whatever. We know how to like cut on the beat. Also, 11 Labs, I mean, we're able to voice the characters ourselves that we write. So, doing the readings and getting the cadence right, it's allowed us to be able to bring that comedic timing to, the stuff that we're generating, which is very helpful.
Yeah,
But
Dan is a stand-up comic. We
Oh,
both done improv. So bringing that sort of comedic performance ability to the shorts helps a ton because then, like Dan said, like we're doing all the performances. So we know the timing, we know the beats to hit, we're editing it. So we know how to cut to the joke. So that really helps a lot.
getting the looks is a little more tricky because like you might gen something like 40 or 50 times and it might have nothing to do with what you asked, but you're like, oh, he's giving that look that I kind of want here from this other video. And you just sort of like piece it together and hopefully it works.
Yep.
it's interesting you mentioned improv because I know it's part of like a comedy process of, the accidental statement or remark, like, oh, that was funny. And it's like, yes, and you're just building up and you're sort of riffing off of each other. When you're working with AI, did you find there's room for the improvisation, or is it more you just script and then match images?
That's a very astute question. Like sometimes you have no idea what it's going to get. And like you just have to sort of roll with it. And sometimes it's terrible. And sometimes it's like really pleasantly unexpected, where like it'll image gen something or like it'll animate something that in a way that you didn't really think to do it. And then it changes how you write to what it just animated. And then it's almost like a little bit of a collaboration with the randomness that you're getting. Um, so like improv definitely has a big part of it, I think. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and one of the references I always use is in our short film Roadkill, we have a scene with a squirrel or a chipmunk who's power washing an old Chevelle. And so we created this image using this like closed circuit television angle, and it's the squirrel with the power washer, and we brought it into Midjourney, and then we brought it into Hailuo or Kling, and it's sort of like he power washes the car. But then AI interpreted it as, oh, he's using a power washer. This is like a small rodent animal. This is going to overpower him. And that's what it did. It like blew him back out of frame, and it ended up being a better take because
Yeah.
the AI interpreted that. And I don't think initially we were like, he uses the power washer and he gets blown off screen. I think it was just like he uses the power washer just to get the shot for the cut. But the way AI interpreted it and then improvised ended up being the shot that made the final cut. So there's things like that that will pleasantly surprise you.
So have you moved now into not only creating the visuals, but bringing AI into the writing, into almost pre-production, into more of the writing process? Or are you just keeping it into the production?
Gonna say strictly production. I
Okay.
mean, we write and overwrite everything we do to death. What do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say from a script standpoint, everything is written. Like it's we that's the thing that we want to hold on to is our jokes, our humor, our emotion that the AI can't match, and that's helped us.
Now, do you think when it comes to AI writing tools, because I know there are people using to develop just pitch ideas, script writing, is there is there a weakness in it? Do you find what AI generates? And like, is it here, they'll just give you the whole mountain, the whole haystack, and you can pull a few needles out of it? Or do you think there are some experiences of like, it came out like, that's actually pretty good, or that gave me an inspiration to move in a different direction that I didn't think of before?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think there's times that it's like you could see it as almost a writer's assistant or some sort of bounce board for things like that when you're stuck if there's writer's block. I think the things that it could spit out are maybe like if you took like a generic action sequence, that's something that doesn't necessarily feel like it needed your emotion behind it. But if your script is personal and the humor is tied to your sensibility, I don't see how the AI is going to be able to replicate that in something that feels genuine and authentic. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
We've never tried it. I am not really sure if what it's capable of. I mean, like Ian was saying, our humor, our writing, our sensibility is like the only thing that we're bringing to this that is individual from anybody else. There are people doing this that are way more technologically gifted than we are and are better at the tools. And I think it's just like we're just trying to showcase our ability, which is centered really around like the writing itself.
Yeah.
So then moving into the production, have you hit any limitations or walls when you're working with the software where you're like, okay, we wanted to do this, it didn't work out, but maybe since you're working within a box, we had to come up with a new solution, a new way to go.
Early on it was tricky, and that's, I mean, like Dan said, October of last year, which in AI world might as well be a decade ago.
Right.
And how fast this stuff moves. There's updates bi-weekly at top of every month from the major players. There's a new runway, there's Gen 4, there's a new Kling, there's a new Minimax, and they've been great. Because of that, we now can dolly left to right. We can now do a push in, we can now do over the shoulder shots. Runway now has references where we can drop, this really solved character consistency in terms of dropping two people that have nothing to do with the scene into the same scene together, and the background will be consistent and the characters will be consistent and their faces and their clothes. So all the problems that we needed to work around either using Photoshop or multiple other programs 6 to 8 months ago ostensibly have been solved. You're still going to get the hiccups here and there, and you might have to generate it 7 to 10 times. But for the most part, it's gotten very, very good.
Also, we've been really lucky, like because we're comedy writers and do a lot of like sitting and talking as part of like what drives the scene. Like we have been able to play to like the limitations of what it's capable of, and still sort of get across what we needed it to.
I really enjoyed your quiet on the set piece. Here is just a small part of it right now.
Casablanca, scene 39, take 246.
Here's squinting at you, Four Eyes.
She doesn't wear glasses.
Here's snooking at you, Billiards Boy. Here's mooing at you, Cowboy. No savor ni papa di algo.
I think they're very funny. But it also does it feed into some people's concerns in terms of deepfakes or you're modifying someone else's work. So now their charge is like I mean, I feel satire's always been done. This has always happened, but someone just points and says like, well, that's not original. You're using software to rip off someone else. Is
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think the Quiet on Scent was like a fun experiment with using public domain images or movies to then sort of help with the exposure of our brand. I think something like that isn't for commercial use. I think that's where you can get into big trouble, is obviously if that's for commercial use. And deepfake for sure. We always like to say AI is inherently neutral. It's just how it's going to be used and whose hands has it. So, but yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, I think that's something we've definitely tried to stay away from outside of the Quiet on Scent, which again just tried to feel like sort of a straight parody. Which, when you look at a South Park or a Family Guy or a thing, like they've been doing that for 20 years. So I think this was just like, oh, what's the interesting way to use the tech to do sort of our satirization or our parody Hollywood show, if you will.
Also, like it's crazy how much the times have changed with this, because I think when we started, a lot of our plan was to try to use these as proof of concepts to like sell another show where like, oh, you do get the rights to this stuff, and like you do it for linear TV or whatever. And in like the 6 to 8 months that we've been doing this, we're like, oh no, this is the new medium. we don't ever need to do that again. And, at some point we'll just be going direct to consumer and, we don't need the old industry. So that's interesting how much that's changed.
Yeah,
Well,
the amount of space that YouTube and TikTok occupies, it's almost more enticing than selling your show to TBS. More people are going to watch it, and it's potentially more lucrative if you're successful on YouTube or a TikTok. It's times have changed.
then how would you see, showed content creation and distribution? Is it going to be all through YouTube? Is it going to be through a streamer? Is it going to might be something completely different? Does everyone have their own network?
It's a great question. I mean, I wish we knew. That would be helpful. I mean,
What would you
YouTube,
like to see? Would you just like, just
I think it's like if you talked about YouTube 10 years ago, YouTube would be like, I'm going on there to watch this nostalgic music video or a weird sports highlight or something, a clip of something viral that I missed. And now you have content creators with 10 to 20 million subscribers that are making more money than they would ever make if they were working at Netflix. And it feels like the amount of space from a streaming standpoint that YouTube controls is undeniable. They're owned by Google. Google just announced that they're going to do their own internal studio. So it feels like the traditional cable model is fading away. And now that it's a creator driven culture, these people on TikTok and Reels and YouTube are thriving, and there's no gatekeepers. It's direct to consumer. You can make your own product and have a relationship with your audience and grow organically from there. And that's really encouraging. And it doesn't take years to get stuck in Hollywood development. So it feels like that's kind of where it's going to continue to trend. Obviously, the tech companies are not going to go away. Apple and Amazon, Netflix will continue to be the top leaders. But I don't know. The fact that Paramount went up for sale, that's concerning. Like a legacy studio that's been around for 100 years is not going to be maybe around anymore and would be absorbed by a tech company. I don't know. It just feels like where it's going. If not, we're already there.
I agree with everything Ian just said. The other side of that coin, which we've also seen, is like there's so much content out there, and it's the early days of this industry. Like there's so much content out there. Eventually, it's going to be curated somehow on, like you're saying, like a handful of platforms that are telling you this is the AI film to watch, and then it's going to be everything else. There will be gatekeepers. We're like already starting to see that sort of happen, where it's like, yeah, the bottleneck will be controlled by somebody, and I don't know. I'm sure it's going to end up just like everything else.
Yep.
do you think people will just you reach more people or you're connecting more people since more people are creating?
Yeah, I think it's like the hyper specific mandate of content has helped these types of comedy creators where again 10, 15 years ago it's a network sitcom and that's kind of like what you're getting. But now because there's so specific creators on TikTok and YouTube, you're going to find a whole subculture of people that are responding to your humor. And that's really been a treat to watch. And I think that's kind of the nice thing about social media. Obviously has its flaws, but the reach that you're getting on TikTok or YouTube that normally this person wouldn't be able to get discovered. And they could be just someone who works a day job living in the Midwest and doesn't have a connection to Hollywood, but because they have the comedic drive and they have a unique voice, this person can now reach a certain amount of audiences, bring someone else joy, have their gift be recognized. And I think that's a nice tool that AI has provided.
Yeah, I mean, we've been writing together for so long, and I'm trying to think of before this, the amount of times on one hand that like we've ever gotten to like show our work to somebody and have them respond and like it. The feedback has been so nice, and being able to actually connect with our audience has been nice. To have an audience that way is so nice. We've had so many projects go through the development ladder and then die before anybody really gets to see it on its feet. So like that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's something that wasn't possible before.
Yeah.
Have you found it feeds your creativity? In other words, instead of saying, all right, I have to get a meeting, I have to send a short, I have to get approval, I have to go through the whole traditional process. Now it's just I make it. So instead of making three projects a year, you're making 10 or 20. Do you find that there's now not a limit to what you can do?
Yeah, I think there's always, I mean, at least for me, like there's always that itch of like writing the next great pilot. Or we just finished a movie a year ago. We finished this Abe Lincoln revisionist history movie. So we still love that traditional writing mode and we're all still writing these scripts. But again, it takes so long. There's no guarantee of sale, there's no guarantee of payment. And the whole point of making those things is so people can see them. And if the end of the road is that no one's going to see your movie because you can't attach an A-list director or you can't attach the right actor or it's too expensive, then to your point, now we can go and figure out a way to make it that people can see this and really respond to it. And I think that's what's been encouraging. So I don't think we have completely stomped out the traditional model, but it's hard. It's hard to get behind it and it's hard to stay excited about it when you gotten so far and have been successful traditionally, and it's still just even now more so than ever is such an uphill battle.
Yeah, and what Ian's saying too, it's so true. It's like the long hauls of the projects that we've developed, we've had to be that encouragement and motivation for each other of just like, hey man, in next month something's gonna happen. Like let's just stay optimistic and like keep the faith and like taking the little wins along that long stretch. It's a full-time job just to be that positive and stay in it. And like now it's like, hey, look at this thing we just made. Like, or like look at this crazy image, and like this it's enough to keep you going. And like that is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever just had an idea that you made it just for yourselves and you look at like, all right, this is hilarious. We're not showing this to the rest of the world. Like,
Totally. What was I working? I was working on something. I was working on Public Domain Court a couple weeks ago. That was just Judge Judy, but it was Steamboat Willie versus King Kong, and Quasimodo's the judge. But it's like these sort of white trash Judge Judy cases. If you were to take these public domain characters, so there's things like that that it's like this would never be a show anywhere else. But if we can cobble this together in a few days and it's a 2 minute short, then yeah, maybe you can see the light of day. So there's a lot of dumb stuff like that that'll come up.
but that's always the funniest stuff. Is there a dream project that you're thinking of now we can do it? We can bypass the things that were holding us back before, may have dropped away. Is there like a big project now? They're like, oh, this is it. This is the opportunity.
Well, I think when we made the short film, we were like, we wanted to do this because at the time, nobody was creating content or watching content that was over like a minute 30 or 2 minutes. It's just like, everybody's like, AI is not capable of doing anything more than 2 minutes. And we're like, I think we can make a short. And the next conversation is like, can we make a 30-minute pilot? And then I think the conversation after that is like, can we make a feature film? We've always been trying to like push the next level of being like, hey, we know we can write the script. It's like, can we just make it longer and fuller? So, I mean, the project itself, non-specifically, but like to do a longer form thing, I think has always been the dream of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Does AI encourage you to collaborate more with other people or less?
I think A to Z on a 90-minute feature would be very daunting. It would be it would be a lot. It wouldn't be insane. It would take a really long time and it would probably still be expensive. There are people in Hollywood that we've spoken to. There's a lot of money in this, and there's people that want to invest and figure out what is a half-hour pilot? What does a hybrid model look like where half of it is AI, half of it is live action? How can we include our actor friends to do our voices and be part of these projects? So I think to do a 90-minute feature on our own would be very hard, would be a big task. But there are people that we're talking to that are teams that want to support this and be on the forefront and believe in using AI to some extent, whether that's in post-production or in pre to do storyboarding, to do the next thing, do a 30-minute pilot, do a 60-minute movie, do a 10-minute series, whatever it may be.
AI has advanced so much, even just from last October. Do you think there's some almost job creep? Is there a point where you want to be, all right, this is enough. Let's just keep using AI. Let's keep using other people. let's keep it as a tool. We don't want it to go more than 50% AI because after that, it's the AI's project. It's not our project. Or do you think there's no creep and it's just, no different than using a script software?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. I mean, I've seen some things now where you can wire in GPT to Adobe Resolve and it'll cut it for you. And now it's like, okay, but you're losing the instincts of the human that's behind the project. So it feels like holding on to that is something that you'd still want. I think there's job creep because when we went from pencil animation and Steve Jobs did Pixar, there was job creep. And I think anytime there's this sort of tech evolution, there's going to be a change in how this is absorbed, how this is used. And I think it's just we're in a shift right now where it's still so new and people don't know how it is or isn't going to affect their lives for the next couple of years.
It's gonna be able to do more and more things, and I think that that is proportional to how many people are gonna create stuff. And then at some point, you have to be able to differentiate yourself from that pack. I mean, how would anybody else know what you're looking at is worth watching if it doesn't have any sort of individualism to it? And you only get to do that by bringing something of yourself into it. So I think the more human involvement is probably behooves the creators to actually do, as opposed to outsource it to everything to AI just because it'll look like everybody else's stuff.
So can AI really write comedy? Or another,
Yeah, I don't know. It probably can, to be honest. Like, I was reading an article by Simon Rich where you know, he gave 10 examples of uh, Onion headlines, and he's like, half of these are AI, half of them are mine. Can you tell the difference? And like the twist at the end was that they were all AI and they were all hilarious. So, you know, you write comedy and jokes long enough, like there is math to it. And I'm sure they're going to be able to figure that out at some point.
Yeah.
so do you think AI can break out of that sort of comedy formula though?
Yeah, I mean, I think the personal experience or the stylization of when you look at someone like Danny McBride and the Rough House guys of why that translates so well because that's such a specific character and voice to him. Or when you look at Larry David and Curb, like that's such a specific voice and style to him that I don't feel like AI is ever going to be able to replicate. If you're asking for a down the middle sort of safe multicam, it might be able to do that. It might be able to pull from the 100,000 scripts that the large language model is learning off of and spit out a down the middle family multicam. But in terms of the specificity of some of the comedians, I don't think it's there yet. I don't think it can do that.
No, just like those, you're right. Like those specific point of views, that is very specific to Danny McBride and Larry David. Like nobody else thinks like that. But joke writing, absolutely.
Do you think it becomes a little more challenging to be original then if there's so many more people able to create something and put something up to stand out?
Yeah, but that's been happening since the internet existed, you know, or social media existed too. I mean, there's just so many more voices out there, and like it is constant pressure to stay ahead of the pack and to do something different and differentiate yourself. It's only just going to get, it'll go along that same trajectory, but that's been a problem before AI for sure.
So if you were talking to someone who was just starting out, um, either a filmmaker or say there's a comedy writer who is like they've done stand up, they've done this, they're like, see this is an avenue. What would you recommend as like a first starting point?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation over the weekend with friends who are longtime sitcom writers and were resistant to AI, and it's we're didn't think it was going to be a thing necessarily, and now have come around to it. They've seen that it's in their lives. They've seen how it's impacting the Hollywood industry, and you're not going to use AI to write your script. You're going to hold on to your script, but you might use AI to create your pitch deck. You might use AI to create your sizzle reel. And I think understanding that it's here, I mean, there's Hollywood agencies and studios that already have relationships with AI companies. Runway has a deal with Lionsgate. Peter Chernan's invested in companies. So if you're pushing back on it from a Hollywood standpoint, it's already in Hollywood. So finding a way to use it to your advantage with your voice and your skill set, you don't have to piece together a whole video, but understanding Midjourney to put together your pitch deck might help you, might help get your script noticed. I don't know, that was kind of, if you're starting out, I think that's like an easy first step to get into it.
What is your favorite comedy, and why is it Short Circuit?
Excellent question.
Um,
Or forget Short Circuit, what is your favorite comedy? What do you look towards and aspire to?
For me, it's Defending Your Life.
Oh, great.
Close second, Young Frankenstein. But comedy that makes you think about like what the hell we're doing here. You know, that's always been my favorite, Ian.
yeah, Some Like It Hot, maybe Blazing Saddles. Mel Brooks's view on the world and what was working, what wasn't working, I think has always been so interesting. Nathan Fielder for me right now, can't miss. The Rehearsals, probably some of the best television I've ever seen. He's just Nathan and Bo Burnham for me feel like they're head and shoulders doing some incredible stuff. Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, those guys together I'll laugh at anything those guys do together. So yeah.
What is sort of like the next project of yours we can expect to see coming out?
We have a few things going that unfortunately we can't talk about because we've reached out and we're working with some studio partners on projects that have yet to be released or announced. So we are working, doing stuff, writing, creating, but that stuff will be out soon. We just can't, unfortunately, talk about it.
Okay. Thank you guys for coming in to talk. I really appreciate your time. I look forward to what you have coming out next. You make some very funny, great stuff. So I think you're going to be around for a very long time. I look forward to it.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate that.
Thanks for the chat.
Thank you, guys.